I'll never forget the sound of my sister's voice at my mother's funeral. Not the tears, not the grief. No, the laughter. She stood there, dressed in black like the rest of us, but her eyes glittered with triumph, not sadness. And in front of everyone, our relatives, our neighbors, even the priest, she smirked and said, "Mom always said you were the worthless one. And now, you're finally left with nothing." My knees almost buckled under me. People gasped, some even chuckled nervously, as if maybe it was just grief talking. But it wasn't. My sister, Claire, had been waiting her entire life for this moment to humiliate me one last time, to remind me of my place in the family, the quiet one, the forgotten one, the disappointment. And I'll admit it, I believed her. For years, I let myself believe her. But what Claire didn't know, what none of them knew, was that just hours later, when we sat down with the lawyer, the truth would come out. And it would leave my sister with her jaw on the floor, while I finally rose from the ashes of a life I thought I'd lost. This is the story of how my sister tried to bury me at our mother's funeral, only to be buried by the truth instead. I should probably start at the beginning, though. My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived in the shadow of my older sister, Claire. She's 2 years older, and from the very beginning, my parents treated her like she was spun from gold. She could do no wrong, top of her class, captain of the cheerleading team, the girl every parent bragged about at family reunions, and me. I was the quiet one, the one who liked books more than parties, who got good grades but never great ones, who dressed simple while Claire sparkled. Every mistake I made was magnified. Every accomplishment I achieved was brushed aside, compared to hers. It was always, "Why can't you be more like Claire? Claire's bringing home another medal. Claire's dating the football captain," and me, I was just Emily, invisible Emily. I used to think that's just how families were, that maybe every younger sibling felt overshadowed. But no, this was different. My parents fed into it. My relatives encouraged it. Even neighbors used to joke that Claire was the queen of the family and I was the maid. But here's the thing. When Mom got sick, everything changed. Claire, my perfect sister, the one who was always by Mom's side when cameras were around, vanished. Suddenly she was too busy with her life, her husband, her little socialite circle. And me, the worthless one, I was the one holding Mom's hand through chemo, sitting up with her at AM when the pain kept her awake, making sure she had soup when she couldn't keep anything else down. I was the one there when she took her last breath. And I'll never forget, right before she closed her eyes for the last time, Mom whispered something to me, something that Claire would never hear, something that made me realize maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been worthless after all. But I didn't know just how much those words would matter until the lawyer opened the will. That's when the real story begins. If you really want to understand how deep the cracks in my family ran, you have to go back to when Claire and I were kids. My earliest memories aren't of laughter or bedtime stories, they're of comparisons. I was 5, Claire was 7. We were sitting at the kitchen table, coloring. I remember being so proud of the little flower I'd drawn with my stubby crayons. I held it up to Mom, smiling so wide I thought my cheeks would split. "Look, Mommy, I drew a flower for you." She glanced at it, sighed, then turned to Claire. "Oh, honey, show me yours." Claire had drawn, I don't even remember, some princess with a crown. And Mom gasped as if Claire had just painted the Mona Lisa. "See, Emily," she said, holding the two papers side by side. Claire has real talent. You should watch how she does it. Learn from her. I still remember the sting in my tiny chest. I crumpled my flower and shoved it under the table, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. It always did. That was the theme of our childhood. Claire shinned. I faded. At school concerts, Claire's solo got a standing ovation, while my part in the choir was barely noticed. At family dinners, my report cards with A's were fine, but Claire's trophies for cheerleading got displayed on the mantel for everyone to admire. Even birthdays weren't safe. On Claire's birthdays, she got big parties with balloons, cakes and presents stacked higher than she could reach. On mine, a small cake at home, maybe a book if I was lucky, and my father. Oh, my father made it worse. He adored Claire. To him, she was the golden child, the proof that his bloodline was superior. He used to ruffle her hair and say, "That's my girl." When it came to me, he'd give a nod, maybe a grunt. Sometimes he'd make jokes at my expense, little digs that made everyone laugh. "Emily's the smart one, but not the pretty one. Don't worry, she'll be useful someday, maybe as Claire's assistant." Everyone laughed, except me. It wasn't just at home either. Even outsiders noticed. I remember being 8 years old, standing in the yard as Mrs. Thompson, our neighbor, waved at us. She said to my mom, loud enough for me to hear, "Claire's going to be a star one day." Poor Emily. Well, at least she's quiet. And my own mom just laughed. Didn't defend me. Didn't say I was special too. I went to bed that night with my pillow soaked in tears, wondering what was wrong with me. The funny thing is, I never hated Claire. Not then. I wanted her approval more than anything. I copied her hairstyles, begged to borrow her clothes, even did her chores sometimes just to make her smile at me. But Claire never saw me as a sister. To her, I was a shadow. Someone she could boss around, dismiss, or mock when she was bored. Once, when I was about 10, I overheard her bragging to her friends, "Emily's basically like my servant. She'll do whatever I ask." It's so funny. They all laughed. And I just stood there, frozen, wishing I could disappear. Looking back, I see now what I didn't then. My parents created that monster. They fed her ego, inflated her importance, and taught her that I was less than, and the worst part. I believed it. For years, I carried that weight that I wasn't enough. That no matter what I did, I would never be more than Claire's little sister. But life has a funny way of flipping the script when you least expect it. Because years later, when mom got sick, suddenly all that favoritism, all those years of putting Claire on a pedestal, came crashing down. And for once, I wasn't the worthless one. The first time mom coughed blood, I knew something was wrong. It was a cold evening in late autumn. The leaves outside had already turned red and gold, and I remember the smell of pumpkin spice candles in the kitchen. She tried to laugh it off, brushing her sleeve across her mouth, like it was just a tickle in her throat. But I saw the stain, dark, heavy, terrifying. "Mom, you need to see a doctor," I said, my voice shaking. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Emily," she whispered, even as her hands trembled. "It's probably just a chest infection." But deep down, we both knew it was more. And within weeks, the truth came out. Stage 4 lung cancer. That diagnosis shattered me. For all the years of favoritism, the jokes, the hurt, she was still my mother. The thought of losing her felt like a gaping hole opening under my feet. I waited for Claire to step up, to be the perfect daughter she had always claimed to be. But Claire? She showed up to the hospital once. Once, she breezed into the room wearing a designer coat, her hair perfect, perfume filling the sterile air of the oncology ward. She kissed Mom's cheek, posed for a few photos, then whispered to me as if I were the help. "Don't let her look too sick if I post this online, okay? People get weird about that." I wanted to scream, but Mom was smiling, fragile and pale, so I swallowed my anger and said nothing. That was the last time Claire came. From that day forward, it was just me and Mom. I became her nurse, her caretaker, her daughter in the truest sense. I took her to chemo appointments. I cooked meals she could barely touch. I held her hair back when she vomited. I rubbed lotion on her dry skin when the meds left her raw. And the nights. Oh, the nights were the hardest. She'd wake up around 3 a.m., coughing until her chest rattled, tears streaking down her cheeks. I'd hold her hand and whisper, "It's okay, Mom. I'm here. You're not alone." Sometimes she'd squeeze my hand back so hard, it felt like she was holding on for dear life. In those moments, all the years of neglect and favoritism melted away. It was just her and me, a mother and daughter trying to find peace in the storm. One night, near the end, she looked at me with glassy eyes. "Emily," she whispered. "Yes, Mom. You were always the strong one. I didn't see it before. I should have told you more often how much I love you." Tears spilled down my face before I could stop them. "It's okay, Mom. I know. But..." She shook her head weakly. "No, you don't. You think you were less than Claire. You weren't. You never were. And one day, you'll understand why." I didn't know what she meant. At the time, I thought it was just the medication talking. But her words stayed with me, etched into my memory like a secret I couldn't quite unlock. 2 weeks later, she was gone. At the funeral, I was hollow, numb. I sat quietly at the front pew, clutching a folded tissue, trying to hold myself together. I thought maybe Claire would surprise me. Maybe she'd stand up, share something kind, and for once we could grieve together. But instead, she stood in front of everyone, adjusted her sleek black dress, and said the words that cut me deeper than anything I'd ever heard. Mom always said Emily was worthless, and now she has nothing to show for her life. People gasped. Some whispered. And I sat there frozen, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the pew, to stop existing. But then, hours later, when the lawyer opened the will, I realized Mom hadn't left me with nothing. She had left me with everything. The air at the funeral was thick with incense and whispers. After Claire's cruel words, I felt every pair of eyes on me, some filled with pity, others with judgment. A few of my cousins smirked, as if Claire had simply confirmed what they'd all believed for years, that I was the lesser daughter. I sat there, clutching the tissue so tightly that it tore in my hand. My stomach churned, but I refused to cry. Not in front of them. Not when Claire was watching me with that smug little smile, her hand resting dramatically on her husband's arm like she was the widow instead of the daughter. I kept replaying Mom's final words in my head. "One day, you'll understand why." I didn't understand then, but I was about to. After the burial, the family gathered at my mother's house. It was supposed to be for a quiet meal, but the atmosphere was tense. My relatives whispered in corners, sneaking glances at me as if I were an intruder in my own mother's home. Then the lawyer arrived. He was a tall, silver-haired man named Mr. Whitaker, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing an expression so serious it silenced the room. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, adjusting his glasses, "we are here to read the last will and testament of Mrs. Margaret Price." The room hushed instantly. Even Claire straightened in her chair, her smugness barely contained. I sat across from her at the long dining table, the wood polish so perfectly I could see my pale reflection in it. My hands trembled in my lap. "Let's begin," Mr. Whitaker said. He started with the formalities. The date, the signatures, the legal jargon. My heart raced so loudly that I could barely hear him, and then he read, "To my beloved daughter, Claire, I leave the jewelry in my collection box and the family photo albums." Claire's smile widened. She gave me a quick, triumphant glance, as if to say, "See, you really do get nothing." But then Mr. Whitaker continued, "To my daughter, Emily, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the family home, my savings accounts, and all other assets in my name." The room erupted, gasps, whispers, even a few sharp intakes of breath. My aunt nearly choked on her tea. Claire's face went ghostly pale, then flushed red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "That's impossible," she snapped, slamming her hand on the table. "There must be a mistake." But Mr. Whitaker didn't even flinch. "There is no mistake, Mrs. Collins. Your mother made her intentions very clear." Claire stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "She would never do this. I was her favorite. She told everyone." And for the first time in my life, I saw Claire crumble. Her mask of perfection cracked, and underneath was raw, desperate panic. I sat frozen, my mind spinning. I owned everything. The house, the savings, everything my mother had worked her entire life for. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel possible. But then Mr. Whitaker reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. And finally, he said, "Your mother left a letter for Emily. She asked that it be read privately." He handed it to me. My hands shook as I took it, my heart hammering. Claire was glaring at me now, as sharp and venomous, as if she could set me on fire with her hatred alone. And in that moment, I realized something. For years, she had treated me like I was worthless. My parents had played along. Even I had believed it. But Mom's last act had flipped everything, and Claire, she wasn't the winner anymore. She was the one left with nothing. I locked myself in my old bedroom that night, clutching the sealed envelope like it was a lifeline. It was strange being back in that room, my childhood sanctuary. The same faded wallpaper, the bookshelves stuffed with novels I used to hide in, the creaky bed where I cried myself to sleep so many nights. And now, here I was, a grown woman, trembling like a child again. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter in Mom's neat cursive. My throat tightened as I began to read. "My dearest Emily, if you are holding this letter, then I am gone. And I know you're probably wondering why I left everything to you. The truth is, I should have told you long ago. I failed you in so many ways. I let your father's favoritism blind me, and I let Claire's pride go unchecked. For that, I am deeply sorry." I wiped at my eyes, the words blurring, but in the end, when the sickness took over, only one daughter stayed by my side. Only one held my hand when I was weak, fed me when I couldn't eat, loved me when I felt unlovable. That daughter was you. You were never worthless, Emily. You were my strength. You were my light. And though I cannot undo the past, I can make sure you have a future. That is why everything I own is now yours. Not because of money, not because of fairness, but because I trust you to honor me with it. I know you will use it wisely, and I know you will find peace. Remember this, Emily. Love is not measured in praise or favoritism. It is measured in actions, and yours have spoken louder than anyone's. With all my love, MOM. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing until my shoulders shook. For years I had begged for her love, her recognition, and now, at the end, she had finally given it to me. But part of me was angry too. Angry that she hadn't said these words when she was alive. Angry that it had taken death for me to know I mattered. Still, it was something. And it was mine. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Claire waiting in the living room. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair disheveled, her composure shattered. "Give it back," she hissed the moment she saw me. I froze. What? The house? The money? The accounts? All of it? You don't deserve it. MOM was confused. She didn't mean it. You tricked her somehow. I blinked in shock. Claire, I was the one who took care of her. Where were you? On vacation. At another dinner party. Posting pictures for likes. Her face twisted with rage. You think you're better than me now? You're still the same pathetic little sister you've always been. And I'm not going to let you steal what's mine. Her voice was venom, dripping with desperation, and for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink back. I didn't apologize. I didn't hide in her shadow. I stood taller, letter still clutched in my hand. It was never yours, Claire. Not then. Not now. Her jaw clenched. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled, and as the echo faded, a chill ran through me, because I knew this wasn't the end. Claire wasn't going to let it go. This was just the beginning. The days after the will reading felt surreal. I wanted the house, the home I'd grown up in, now legally mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider, I was the heir. Yet instead of feeling triumphant, I felt uneasy, because I knew Claire, and Claire didn't lose gracefully. It started with phone calls. The first one came the very next morning. I answered without checking the caller ID. Still half asleep. Emily. Claire's voice purred. Too sweet, too deliberate. I stiffened. What do you want? Oh, come on. Don't be so cold. We're sisters. I almost laughed. Now we were sisters. After years of her treating me like dirt. She continued. Listen, I was thinking, maybe we could split Mom's estate. You know, 50-50. That would be fair. I clenched my jaw. Fair? Claire, you got the jewelry. You got the albums. And I got everything else because that's what MOM wanted. There's nothing unfair about that. Her tone sharpened. Don't be ridiculous. MOM wasn't in her right mind. Everyone knows she adored me. She must have been confused. But you. She paused, her voice dropping low. You could fix this. You could sign over half to me. Keep the peace in the family. I almost dropped the phone. Keep the peace. After you humiliated me at her funeral? Silence. Then a hiss. You're making a mistake, Emily. You won't win this. She hung up. I thought that was the end of it. But then came the texts. Dozens of them. MOM didn't mean it. You know you'll never be able to handle the money. Dad would wanted me to have it all. You'll regret this. And when I didn't respond, she escalated. She showed up at the house one evening, banging on the front door so hard I thought the glass would shatter. "Emily, open this door right now," she screamed. "This is my house, not yours. Do you hear me? Mine." I didn't open. I stood in the hallway, trembling, clutching Mom's letter like a shield. Eventually, she left, but not before shouting loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "You'll be nothing without me. You always were." Her desperation wasn't just about the money. I could see that clearly now. It was about control. For her whole life, she had been the center, the favorite, the queen. And now, with one signature, MOM had stripped that away and handed it to me, and Claire couldn't handle it. But the more she pushed, the more something inside me shifted. For years, I had been silent, passive, the forgotten one. But now, for the first time, I had power. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to use it. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A week later, Mr. Whitaker, the lawyer, called me. "Emily, there are some additional documents your mother left behind. Things I think you should see. Private things." My stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" "Letters, records, evidence," he said carefully. "Things about Claire. Things your mother wanted you to know." I froze. "Evidence, yes," he said. "And I think you'll understand once you read them." That night, as I held the thick envelope of documents, my hands shook. If what he said was true, then MOM hadn't just left me her estate. She had left me the truth. And maybe the weapon I needed to finally end Claire's reign once and for all. The envelope sat on my desk like it was alive, humming with secrets. For hours, I just stared at it, afraid to open it. Because deep down, I knew whatever was inside would change everything. Finally, just after midnight, I broke the seal. Inside was several handwritten letters and a stack of documents clipped together. My mother's cursive filled the pages, her words reaching out to me from beyond the grave. I started with the first letter. "Emily," it read, "if you are reading this, then you must be facing Claire's wrath. I know her well enough to know she will not accept my decision easily. But I want you to understand why I chose as I did. For years I allowed Claire to manipulate me. She lied to me. She took from me. And I covered for her because I thought protecting her was what a mother should do. But in the end, I realized I was enabling her cruelty. I did not want to leave this world without making it right." I frowned, my hands tightening on the paper. "Lies? Took from her." I flipped to the next sheet. It wasn't a letter, it was a bank statement. And as I scanned it, my stomach dropped. There were multiple withdrawals over several years, large sums of money taken from Mom's savings account. The signature next to them, Claire's. I kept reading, flipping through more pages. Receipts, bank slips, even a loan agreement with Claire's name on it. My sister had been bleeding MOM dry for years. The next letter confirmed it. Claire came to me again and again, begging for money. At first, I thought she needed help: college, her wedding, her home. But it never stopped. She gambled, she spent, she wasted. And when I said no, she threatened to cut me off, to ruin me socially. I was weak. I gave in. But you, Emily, you never asked me for a thing. You gave me your time, your love, your presence. You were rich in ways Claire never was. Tears blurred my vision. My sister hadn't just been cruel, she had been stealing from the very woman she claimed to be the favorite of, and no one knew. Until now. At the bottom of the stack was a final, smaller note in Mom's careful handwriting. Use this if you must. I hope you won't have to, but if Claire makes your life unbearable, do not be afraid to show the truth. Sometimes the only way to silence a bully is with her own sins. I sat back, shaking. All those years of feeling small, of being invisible, of believing I was less when in reality, Claire was the one living a lie. I had proof. I had power. And for the first time, I wanted to use it. The next day, I didn't have to wait long. Claire showed up again. This time calmer, her voice smooth like honey. "Emily," she said, stepping into the living room as if she still owned it. "I've been thinking. Maybe we started off on the wrong foot. Maybe we can work something out." I folded my arms. "Work something out? Like what?" She smiled thinly. "You keep the house. I'll take the money. That's fair, don't you think?" My heart pounded as I pulled the envelope from the table and set it between us. "I think," I said slowly, "you should read this." She frowned, her manicured hands trembling slightly as she pulled out the first statement. Her eyes flicked across the numbers, then the signature, and her face drained of color. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Oh, I would," I said, my voice steady for the first time in my life. "You want to keep pushing me, keep calling me worthless? Fine. But the moment you do, everyone will know exactly who's been worthless all along." She dropped the papers like they burned her. For the first time ever, Claire was speechless and I was just getting started. I should have been used to my family's coldness by now, but nothing prepared me for the quiet war that erupted after that disastrous dinner. Mom stopped calling. Dad's voice became curt and businesslike whenever we spoke. And Lily, well, Lily acted like I'd publicly humiliated her, when in truth, she'd been the one swinging the knife at me all along. But here's the thing about silence: it can be louder than words. Their distance wasn't just avoidance, it was strategy. They were hoping I'd fold, that I'd call crying, begging to still be included, offering to fix things. What they didn't know was that I'd already found strength in being cast out. I didn't need their table, their validation, or their approval anymore. Still, when the family group chat exploded with wedding updates, Lily's wedding, it felt like another jab to the ribs. Pictures of the expensive venue, her dress fittings, my cousins gushing over her glow, and me. Not a single word, no invitation, not even a passive-aggressive "you're welcome to stop by if you want." I stared at those updates, my jaw clenched, until finally, I laughed out loud. Alone in my tiny apartment. It hit me: this wasn't rejection. This was liberation. They'd made the choice for me, to erase me from their perfect narrative. And if they thought I'd crawl back, they'd severely underestimated just how far I'd already climbed without them. But life has a cruel sense of humor, doesn't it? Because just a week later, while sipping coffee on my balcony, I got a call that flipped to script. It was from the bank, and the voice on the line said, "Miss Carter, we just wanted to verify some activity regarding your grandmother's estate. Your sister Lily has been attempting to access funds in your name. Could you confirm whether this authorization is valid?" I nearly dropped my mug. My grandmother's estate, my inheritance, the very thing I had fought to protect from my family's claws. Lily was now trying to dig in too. For the first time in weeks, the quiet inside me wasn't just peace, it was fire. They'd frozen me out, mocked me, humiliated me, but now they'd crossed a line. And if they thought I was done fighting, they were about to find out just how much damage a woman with nothing left to lose could do. The moment I hung up with the bank, my pulse was racing like I'd just sprinted a marathon. Lily had tried to steal from me again, And not just any money. This was the last tie to my grandmother, the only woman in my family who had ever truly loved me. I remembered the afternoons baking cookies in her kitchen, her soft voice reminding me, "One day, sweetheart, you'll see their true colors. And when you do, don't waste your time fighting to belong. Build your own table." Those words had never rung louder. I pulled out my laptop and opened a fresh document. If they wanted war, I wasn't going to show up unarmed. I started with the basics: screenshots of Lily's attempts to access my inheritance, copies of the estate papers my grandmother left me, bank statements, every message, every snide remark, every proof of exclusion from my family over the years. But revenge isn't about screaming the loudest. It's about striking when no one sees you coming. I knew Lily. Her wedding wasn't just a wedding, it was her stage. She wanted the world to see her as the golden daughter, the one who'd done everything right. And my parents, they'd lap it up like the obedient audience they were. That's when the plan began to take shape. I didn't need to crash her wedding or cause a scene. No, that would be too easy, too expected. Instead, I'd dismantle her perfect little performance brick by brick. I spent nights digging into her financial history. At first, it was little things: unpaid credit card bills, sketchy business loans from friends. But then, with a little more digging, I found something that made my blood run cold. Lily had been funneling money out of her fiancé's accounts, quietly, sneakily, like a leech dressed in silk. And the best part? He had no clue. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. For years, they'd painted me as the screw-up, the outcast, the disappointment. But here was Lily, the family's golden child, sitting on a house of cards. And all it would take was one push to send it crashing down. The thought of revenge didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel alive, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about setting the record straight, about showing them that the daughter they laughed at, humiliated, and cast aside wasn't the weak one. She was the one holding the match. And it was only a matter of time before the fire caught. The day of Lily's wedding arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. I arrived quietly, dressed in understated black, a sharp contrast to the glittering gowns surrounding me. Everyone expected me to slink in, invisible as always, the shadow sister. But I didn't slink. I stood tall, shoulders back, heart pounding with anticipation. From the moment I stepped into the hall, all eyes flicked to me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some whispered pity, some amusement. And then I caught my mother's letter and the evidence folder safely tucked in my clutch. I didn't need anyone's attention. I had patience, I had strategy, and I had the truth. The ceremony proceeded. Lily was radiant, glowing with the approval she'd craved her whole life. My parents sat in the front row, smiling as though everything in the world was as it should be. I waited until the reception, when everyone was gathered for speeches. Lily's father, smug and proud, began to toast the happy couple. I stayed in the back, observing, calculating, and then it was my turn. I wasn't supposed to speak, but when I stood, the room fell silent. Even Lily froze mid-toast, sensing the change in energy. I cleared my throat and smiled politely. "I'd like to say a few words." Gasps, murmurs. My parents exchanged worried glances. "First, I want to thank everyone for coming," I began, my voice calm but strong. "It's an honor to celebrate this day with my sister, Lily." Or should I say, I let a beat stretch long enough to make hearts pound, the woman who spent years pretending to be perfect while quietly destroying our family. The room went cold. Chairs creaked. People leaned forward. Unsure whether I was joking, I pulled out the folder. You see, while everyone thought I was the useless one, the shadow Lily was quietly siphoning money, manipulating the family, and even attempting to steal from me, the person she thought was powerless. I laid out the evidence, screenshots of her attempts to access my inheritance, the bank statements, the letters from my mother documenting her thefts. Lily's face went pale. Her carefully curated smile crumbled, her hand shaking as she tried to grab the folder. Emily, you can't, this isn't true. I held it out just beyond her reach. It is true. And now, everyone can see it. All the lies, all the cruelty, all the times you humiliated me, there on record. And it's finally out in the open. My parents were speechless. Even my relatives, who had always laughed at me, now stared at Lily in stunned disbelief. The whispers began, growing louder. She did all that. Is this for real? I can't believe Lily. And as Lily's perfect world unraveled around her, I felt something I had never felt before: freedom. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the shadow. I was the one who had stood tall, collected the truth, and used it to finally claim my place. By the end of the night, Lily had fled the reception in tears. My parents were left reeling from the revelations, and I smiled quietly to myself. Mom had been right. Love isn't measured in praise or favoritism. It's measured in action. And I had acted. I had taken the pain, the neglect, and the humiliation, and turned it into power. And in that moment, with the glittering lights of the wedding hall reflecting off the shattered illusions of my family, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the forgotten daughter. I was unstoppable. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most teach us the most powerful lessons. My family tried to define me, to crush me, to erase me. But in the end, it wasn't hate that made me strong, it was love. Love for my mother, love for myself, and finally, the fierce love of claiming my own life. Claire and Lily may have thought they had all the power, but I learned the truth. Those who underestimate the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, often don't see the storm waiting beneath the calm, and storms change everything.